Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who. Last time around we had Evolution of the Daleks. What was that one about?
Well, this was the completion of the two-parter Daleks in Manhattan. The Daleks had taken over construction of the Empire State Building to get some kind of power source so that they could create a human-Dalek hybrid. But when that happened, the remaining non-human Daleks said, wait a minute, this can't be right. And so there's a war between them, and the pigmen try to do something, but they're not able to do anything. Ultimately, the Doctor manages to get up on the tower just as the lightning strikes. So instead of putting the Dalek experiment in the correct sequence, he puts his own DNA into the semi-hybrid people who then turn against the Daleks, and there's a big blow-up, and 3 of the Daleks, the Cult of Skaro, are obliterated, but one manages to escape in the temporal time rift or whatever. So, obviously not the end of the Daleks.
Yeah, the last remaining Dalek did escape Dalek Khan. So yeah, who knows? Maybe they'll show up again at some point.
The Wrath of Khan.
Well, yeah, so...
Sorry.
But yeah, that's pretty much where we left off. Moving on to episode 6 today. We should also say, new episode of Torchwood this week. We're going to be doing that, and that will, funny enough, also be episode 6 of Torchwood. So we'll be watching that. I know some people... I guess we can talk about that on Torchwood. I know some people want us to watch a particular episode of season 1. I don't know if we have the time. I don't know. We'll see. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So...
the reason we're somewhat stretched for time here, we're right now, this is Saturday, we're in the second weekend of the Scarlet Pimpernel, and I'm at the theater every night, and I got one more weekend after this, so these next 2 weeks we're kind of tight here. So
there might be times where we essentially miss in between episodes of Torchwood. We'll get them later, but in fact that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what's going to happen on the next episode, but we'll get to that in that episode. So yeah, we're moving on to episode 6 of Doctor Who. I don't know if there's anything else to say before we get into it.
Well, again, the title of this obviously leads us to believe that somebody is going to die and come back to life, because that's what the whole Lazarus experience is about. And I am assuming that nobody at Doctor Who thought of really going back in time to the era of Judea in the Roman Empire and actually having the Doctor take part in the original resurrection of Lazarus by Jesus of Nazareth.
They haven't, but that would be interesting if somehow they do it to where it's like, well, how did Lazarus come back? He regenerated, obviously. So, but then again, I feel like it would have said that, it's like, he came back to life, and then his entire face and body changed. They left that part out. Don't need to get bogged down by the details of it, so. But no, I'll just go ahead and say that is not what we are doing. And probably they just don't want to deal with that sort of a controversy.
Yeah.
I was going to say on Twitter, this was before Twitter existed, before the dark times. So...
Well, I mean, they have gone back. For example, the first Doctor accidentally caused the fire that burned Rome during Nero's era.
Yeah.
The first Doctor also had to prompt the Greeks to build the Trojan horse. And I'm sure there are other instances where the Doctor played a part in history. But, yes. But having the Doctor interfere with biblical history...
Yeah, none of those are an active religion of the modern day who will get on the internet and cost RTD his job, probably. So yeah, although he did do, I always mention it, he did that, mini-sode, or, mini series or something, where, Christopher Eccleston played... the second coming of Jesus, but he was Jesus, but he was obviously still a person too. And I hear that's just a really good show, miniseries, whatever it is. And Christopher Eccleston is really great in it. So I don't know, maybe but this was getting too popular. This was starting to go overseas, BBC America and stuff like that. They didn't want to poke the sleeping bear that is the American religious institutions. So,
Boy, howdy.
anywho,
Anywho.
Is that it?
That's it.
Well, let's get started on this episode.
Home. You took me home.
Like the morning after we left. So you've only been gone about 12 hours, no time at all, really.
Now, double check that real quick.
Shakespeare.
The push of a single button. I will change what it means to be human.
Thank you for everything.
It was my pleasure.
Man, how long has it been since he kicked someone out? Alright, never mind.
No, I'm sorry. Did he say he was going to change what it means to be human?
He's too curious.
Mr. Saxon wants to be sure they like what they see.
Don't worry. Our friend will get his money for it.
He looks familiar. The actor, I mean.
Oh, black tie. You know, whenever I wear there's something bad always happens.
It's not the outfit, that's just you. Anyway, I think it suits you. In a James Bond kind of way.
James Bond? Really?
The other British man that changes his face.
Mum! All right. What's the occasion? What do you mean? I'm just pleased to see you, that's all.
You saw me last night.
I know.
You
I just...
know, nearly died 5 times since then.
This is a friend of mine. The doctor.
Doctor what?
No, it's just the doctor. We've been doing some work together.
You're all right. Lovely to meet you, Mrs. Jones. Heard a lot about you.
Have you? What have you heard then?
Well, you know, that you're Martha's mother, and...
Well, I heard a lot. I didn't actually listen.
That's about it. We haven't had much time to chat, you know, been busy.
Busy? Doing what exactly?
Oh, you know, stuff.
Could have supplied some glasses.
I am Richard Lazarus. I am 76 years old. And I am reborn!
He did it. He actually did it.
It can't be the same guy. It's impossible. It must be a trick.
And it did his hair perfectly and everything.
I wish it were.
What happened inside the capsule was exactly what was supposed to happen. No more, no less.
You've no way of knowing that until you've run proper tests.
Look at me. You can see what happened. I'm all the proof you need.
That's how science works.
Properly certified before we start to operate commercially.
Well, that is how capitalism works.
You are just...
1940. Do you remember? Night after night. Explosions. Guns. Firestorm.
My parents had sent me to the country by then.
When the sirens went, we go to the cathedral there. People used to shelter in the crypt.
And there was this weird kid with a gas mask.
Among the dead.
Look,
Is he anything different?
Look at it.
Oh my god, did that just change? But it can't have.
But it did.
It's impossible.
And that's 2 impossible things we see so far tonight. Don't you love it when that happens?
That means Lazarus
No.
has changed.
Something in his DNA has been activated and won't let him stabilize. Something that's trying to change him.
Change him into what?
I don't know. But I think we need to find out.
That woman said they were going upstairs.
Let's go.
There's a lot of upstairs.
Rich. Is it some kind of seizure?
Well, don't bother calling for
What
help.
should I do? I don't understand what's happening.
Ugh. Yeah, okay. His DNA is turning him into a graboid. Now I have a darker suit. Yeah.
I think you need one of these.
Thank you. It's very kind of you.
Do you know that man?
No, he's a friend of my daughter's.
Perhaps she should choose her friends more carefully.
Well, he's Torchwood or Unit or somebody.
Some people live more in 20 years than others do in 80. It's not the time that matters, it's the person.
But if it's the right person, what a gift that would be.
Or what a curse.
Tish, he's a monster.
I know the age thing's a bit freaky, but it works for Catherine Zeta-Jones.
It's not really an age thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Run!
I think in Marvel they call that the Abomination.
You people are in serious danger. You need to get out of here right now.
Don't be ridiculous. The biggest danger here is choking on an olive.
That's a big olive.
Yeah.
No, get away from her!
You know what? Don't stand there!
You're a joke, Lazarus. A footnote in the history of failure.
A human scorpion?
Yeah, the thing is, the doctor's right. This isn't even going to make the evening news.
Gotta get me one of those.
Eh. Yeah. That's like Spider-Man. Yeah. You know, this does actually seem like a Spider-Man story.
Running in heels.
Eh.
Turning all the gas burners on.
Good job.
Blasted Lazarus.
Just kill him.
No.
What's wrong with noise, I'm saying?
This is masterpiece. I'm betting it won't destroy it, not even to get at us.
But we're trapped.
Well, no, it's a slight problem.
You mean you don't have a plan?
Yes, the plan was to get inside here.
Then what?
Well, then I'd come up with another plan.
Is it alien?
No, for once it's strictly human in origin.
Human? How can it be human?
Away from dormant genes in Lazarus' DNA, the energy field in this thing must have reactivated them. Now it looks like they're becoming dominant.
So it's a
Do
throwback.
all humans have
Some
this
option that
in
humans
them?
rejected for you millions of years ago. But the potential is still there. Looked away in your genes. Forgotten about until Lazarus unlocked it by mistake.
I guess that's a yes.
I thought we were going to go through the blender then.
Really shouldn't take that long just to reverse the polarity.
Meh.
That must be better out of practice.
He seems so human again. It's kind of pitiful.
Elliot saw that too. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper.
Paraphrased by Senator Padme Amidala. This is how democracy ends to thundering applause.
She's all right.
Oh, Mrs. Jones, we still haven't finished our chat.
Oh.
Keep away from my daughter.
Mum, what are you doing?
All of the mothers, every time.
He is dangerous. It wasn't his fault. He saved us, all of us.
And it was Tish who invited everyone to this thing in the first place. So I'd say technically, it's her fault.
That's such a brother thing to do.
Do you think he's in here?
Where would you go if you were looking for sanctuary?
Sanctuary! Rung any good bells lately, Doctor?
Facing death is part of being human. You can't change that.
No, Doctor. Avoiding death, that's being human. It's our strongest impulse to cling to life with every fiber of being. You're so sentimental, Doctor. Maybe you are older than you look.
I'm old enough to know that a longer life isn't always a better one.
Leave him, Lazarus. He's old and bitter. But he has a taste for fresher meat.
Martha, no.
I don't know which is more terrifying, the monster or the creepy naked man running after you.
Yes, the old pipe organ. Pulling out all the stops.
Hypersonic sound waves. Inspired.
That's literally what pulling out all the stops means.
Yeah, he's actually playing the soundtrack. Oof.
I've got you. Hold on. Martha!
What?
Who is he? He's the Doctor.
Take that as you will. Boy, the nuns are going to be so confused tomorrow morning.
Leave a message. Martha, it's your mother. Please phone me back.
It's always
I'm
poor
begging
timing.
you. I know who this doctor really is. I know he's dangerous. You're gonna get yourself killed. Please trust me. This information comes from Harold Saxon himself. You're not safe.
Harold Saxon?
So, you haven't noticed. They've referenced a Mr. Saxon several times this season, actually. So, they said it about 3 times in this episode, I think. So, there was one at the beginning where Lazarus was saying, like, oh, we need to get this, up and running, because Mr. Saxon, probably wants his money out of this. So, there's been a couple little things, and the first mention, I think it was the first mention. I guess I don't really know, but one of the earliest mentions was actually in The Runaway Bride, when the army comes in to deal with the big spiderweb star, and they say, we have direct approval from Mr. Saxon to blow the crap out of this thing. So
I always assumed that was the Prime Minister after Harriet Jones, or Harriet, whatever her name was, stepped down. Anyway, all right, go ahead. So I'm missing this. It's another Bad Wolf setup type thing, but not as obvious as the Bad Wolf.
Yeah, this is about, it's episode 6. It's about the same time you would start noticing Bad Wolf being a thing. Yeah. So yeah, but it is in that similar vein of, what's this thing they keep mentioning, this Mr. Saxon guy, and apparently he has information on the Doctor. So,
all right, now I'm probably reading way too much into this, but Saxon, of course, is one of the 3 groups that invaded the British Isles: the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes. Essentially, we figure that the Angles won out, which is why the island was later known as Angleland. But the Saxons were still the dominant group when William the Conqueror came over, and he was a Norman, so you had the Normans and the Saxons together. Harold, of course, you have Harold Godwinson, who was, if I recall, the man who would be king that William the Conqueror ended up killing in the battle. One of the soldiers of William's army killed Harold Saxon, in the Battle of Hastings in 1066. So I'm assuming that has nothing to do with it, but I will be pleasantly surprised if it does.
That would be interesting if that really tied in. I mean, maybe that could be like part of the idea of like where they came up with the name, but yeah, but we don't know. We don't know. I mean, I know they know, but we don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I want to say they made a reference to Saxon on Torchwood, but I can't remember. Like, it's sort of in the background. Maybe I'm just thinking of a different episode from here. So, but this is the first time where they really are like, hey, you need to be looking for this Mr. Saxon guy. You need to be paying attention to that. So,
all right.
But more to the point of this episode, what do you think?
All right. I like it. It's certainly no Shakespeare code, but very few of the episodes are.
Yeah.
Here's what, again, if I were a story editor, I might have said to the lady who wrote this. Genetic material from whatever would seem to have been more likely if the guy, instead of looking like a scorpion, looked more like a ferocious giant, meat-eating ape.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the only thing. I mean, I understand you got to have the scorpion because he's big and ugly and scary, and you want scary aliens, but he's not an alien. That's the whole point. Because I kept thinking, then maybe he was part alien who had landed here, 65 years ago and took human form. But so saying that there was some kind of insectoid DNA locked in his genetic makeup that the machine unlocked from billions of years ago, or millions, or whatever. Again, that's my only real thing. I think it just would have been just as effective if you had a giant ape. If you can have the claws on the ape and the ridgeback and the big ugly teeth and the whole works. So, I got to thinking the sound to disorient him and make him fall. That was Spider-Man 3, where the symbiote couldn't stand the sonic vibrations.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad episode. To me, it's not up to the standards of what we've seen previously.
Yeah. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time this season, had some crazy genetic human experiment thing in this crazy lab that they had to defeat, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened 2 episodes in a row.
Yeah.
Like, to go straight from Dalek Sec and his experiments to Lazarus and his stuff, it's very strange. I think also one of the criticisms for this episode really just is it's difficult to kind of get invested with such an obvious CG monster. Like, there's no attempt to make him real whatsoever, and this is 2006 to 2007 maybe at this point, and their CG just isn't up to snuff for that. And I will say it at least sort of adds to the uncanny valley. Like, he looks more disturbing because he is this weird CG monster, but at the same time it's like, you really weren't ready for that.
And I don't think, unless I missed it, they didn't set up anywhere early in the story that he would be affected by sound. Even if it had just been the Doctor's sonic screwdriver that had caused him to react or something.
Yeah.
Because that comes out of nowhere. Get him up to the tower and I'll do the pipe organ on him.
The closest is they just say at the beginning, like, his machine works with like some sort of sound frequency that disrupts his DNA, but you're not really focusing on that, like how it works. You're just focusing on the fact that he did turn himself young again.
Yeah.
So, see, it's kind of out there, and even still, it's like it didn't even really. I don't know. I guess it changed him back. It was more just a thing of, I think the fall killed him more than anything else. So, which they at least established that it's like, in that form he's 3 times bigger, but it's not like he creates any more mass. So he stretches himself even more thin. And if a a fall from that height would kill a human, so it makes sense that it would still kill him even in that form, but...
Again, an insect, though, doesn't have an interior skeleton. An insect has an exoskeleton. So, theoretically, giant scorpion dropped from that height could theoretically survive. It would have been, again, logically speaking, and I know we're talking about why we're using logic, if he were transforming back to a human as he fell, so that when he hit the ground, that it would be very obvious that he would not survive that.
Well, yeah.
But the one thing I do like about this is they've now set up a family very similar to Rose and Jackie, whereas Jackie ultimately went along with what Rose was doing. Didn't like it necessarily, but she understood. Martha's mother, even before she was told by, watch out for Harold Saxon or listen to him, she didn't like him.
Yeah. Just in the span of... And because there is a difference, it's like, this time, the doctor, he did it. He got her back exactly when he said he would. It was 12 hours later, and he did that. But now it has sort of a different effect, whereas with Rose, it's like, okay, you disappear for an entire year. You come back with this guy, and suddenly, now everything's different. Whereas for Martha, it's like, I saw you last night. You were not like this. I don't even know who this guy is, but you seem to be, best friends all of a sudden. Yeah. So I like that it sort of plays with a different aspect of the time travel with Martha and her relationship with her family. Yeah. So
now, was Tish in the episode with the hospital on the moon with the platoon of Jadoon?
Yes.
Okay. So Tish should have some inkling of what's going on there, even though Martha's only been gone 12 hours, because she went to the moon with the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a weird thing they kind of gloss over. I mean, they even glossed over it at the end of that episode. It's like, Tish should believe that because she saw it happen. She was like on the street watching it happen. Whereas, they glossed over it at the end of that episode where it's like, oh, well, on the news they're saying the people were drugged and stuff. Like, okay, you're trying to get around that, sure. But you're trying to get around proof that aliens happen. I mean, it's the same thing here where it's like, it's like, oh, Lazarus, you'll just be another footnote in humanity's failures. It's like, not even that. Nobody knows what happened. Like, sure, there were the people there, but they're not going to believe it. And probably you would, I guess if there's security cameras, maybe, but it's like, on the news, it's just going to be some disaster happened, and he died in his own experiment, basically.
Yeah.
And especially because there's no giant bug body. There's just him, and he's back to being an old man. So it's just, it just didn't work. Why was he in a cathedral? I don't know. He died later. I don't know. They'll come up with something for the news, but yeah. It is an interesting relationship with Mrs. Jones, and honestly, just the fact that it's like it is different, but I also just like that this is not stuff we did in classic Doctor Who, and the fact that it's like all right, we had Jackie. And she slapped him. And then now we meet Mrs. Jones and she slapped him too. And it's just like, why this is not... We're never getting... Like, he cannot get away from that, basically. So...
But in classic Who, did we ever meet any of the companions' mothers or other relatives?
The closest is we saw, Tegan's aunt, I think. I want to say there was someone with Ace, but I can't remember.
Yeah, well, there was the people she hung out with.
Yeah, I don't remember if she had family, but yeah, we just didn't really see any of that. But that is just because, also too, just the structure of that show was so much different. There was never a moment of, and now we'll go back to the present day in London. You go home, get your stuff, then we can go off again.
And speaking of that, that's one of the things about the first Doctor that I think we discussed then. When the Doctor sent Ian and Barbara back to their own time in the Dalek machine, he sent them back to 65 and not to 63.
Yeah, they had been gone for 2 years.
Yeah. So there was never any explanation of how, and obviously they got back at Coal Hill because, Ian becomes the headmaster in... Remembrance of the Daleks. It wasn't he.
Something like that.
So, but yeah, he should have sent them back to the time that they disappeared so that they could say, oh, well, we've been gone for 2 years, but here we are right back and nobody needs to know what happened.
Yeah. I mean, it was just such a strange thing with, I mean, especially those early episodes where it's like, the Doctor, he just can't fly the TARDIS for like 5 years. And it's just like, okay, that's strange. I think they'll like bring that up in a future episode where it's like, yeah, the Doctor just didn't really have control over the TARDIS back then. So it's just, you take off and wherever you land, so.
And before I forget, the Time Lords did send Jamie and Zoe back to where they were picked up, but then wiped their memory so that they couldn't remember it.
Right, yeah. So it's, I mean, it is a thing that I guess just the Doctor can never get it right, except now, but it didn't help. So, but yeah. As for the other stuff, I'm going to be honest. When they finally got out of the laboratory and they were headed for the cathedral, I was like, oh, geez, we're here already? I thought that, like, I kind of thought, like, that lasted a bit longer, and I was like, well, I know the cathedral is the climax, and then I looked down, and it's like, well, I've taken, like, 2 notes. I should write some more things down. It's like, honestly, there's not a ton of, like, it's just a very, run away from monster episode.
Yeah.
So.
And I certainly hope we don't get into the, base under siege mentality, run away from the monster mentality that we got in some of the early classic Who.
Because I'm trying to remember what the next episode is.
It's 42.
Yeah, I barely remember that episode. I think most people will agree that's like one of the least memorable episodes. Because even something like, with like Love and Monsters, you'd certainly remember Love and Monsters. But 42, that is definitely one that's just like in one ear out the other. So I think also around this time, I also did a reaction to, there was like an animated episode that they did, or kind of, it was like, they did like a bunch of animated segments that all kind of told one story, and then you can just kind of splice them all together into one episode. And the animation is not great. You remember Scream of the Shalka? It was kind of like that. And it was just some weird adventure with the Doctor and Martha. I don't think we're going to watch that because we don't really need to. Unless, I think I specifically did that to give myself like another week to like make sure Torchwood was lined up. So I don't know, maybe we will do that just to make sure these Torchwood episodes line up. I don't know, but I think that was around this part. I might have watched it like right after this episode, but I don't remember. I don't know. Yeah, well, since we've still got plenty of time left in the season, I guess you can let us know in the comments, do you want us to watch The Infinite Quest, I believe it was called. I don't remember it being good. That's really the end of that statement. So, but we could. I don't really remember it being super bad, but I don't know. But yeah, other than that, I mean, this is still a decent episode. It's interesting enough, and definitely like probably the most interesting thing is the dynamic with the family and how Mrs. Jones is getting more and more concerned. So, and then obviously that sets up this whole Saxon mystery. Who is Harold Saxon really? I don't know. It's an interesting thing, especially because you speculated the guy there. It's like, well, he might be Torchwood, he might be Unit, and it's like, if this was last season, he probably would have been Torchwood because he's kind of got that enemy of the Doctor kind of thing going on. But there's none of that because I mean that version of Torchwood is all gone. So the only actual functioning Torchwood group that's left is Torchwood 3, and they're not going to be enemies of the Doctor. Yeah. So,
now, just to satisfy my curiosity, Torchwood was on for 3 seasons?
4, technically.
4. During those 4 seasons, was there ever actually any crossover with Doctor Who?
Yes. Not necessarily on Torchwood, but there will be crossover with with Doctor Who between Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures, because they were all airing around the same time. So they take advantage of that, kind of like with the Arrowverse shows.
Yeah.
So it does do that. That's honestly the only reason we're watching Torchwood. Otherwise, I would have been like, we don't have the time. We're just gonna stick with Doctor Who. But the fact that it does tie in, now it only ties in for a while. Like once you get to about season 3, it doesn't really tie in, but season 3 is really good. It's kind of one of the best things that they've made for Doctor Who. Season 4, because I can just go ahead and tell you now. Season 4, which they made, I think, around the first Matt Smith season, actually. And they kind of sold it to America a little bit. It was co-produced by Starz, I think. And so it's like, and now we're going to take the Torchwood team and throw them in America for 10 episodes and do wacky situations there. So it's an interesting thing. We're not going to react to season 4 because there's really no tie-in at that point. But we might just still watch that on our own time because it's an interesting season. It's not amazing, but it's still kind of good. So, but anyway, speaking of Torchwood, we got to get to the next episode of Torchwood right now. Or I say right now, it'll probably be in 5 minutes. Get up, stretch, then move on back to Torchwood. So, you got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then that is basically it. With all of that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist with all of our modern Doctor Who reactions, as well as another playlist with every Doctor Who reaction that's on the channel. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.